Good evening. All right, we've got sound. I'd like to welcome you to the Mayor's Press and Community Briefing for May 29th. We're continuing the trend. I think this is our fourth or fifth, not including the State of the City speech. So welcome to all of you in the room and online. The City Manager will be joining us shortly. Just to review again sort of the overall goals and why we're doing this. It's an opportunity to give you more communications than just what you hear from the council dais, and in a format that is actually easier to use than the council dais, because there we can't have a dialogue, we can only chat, and you can only chat one way to us in public comment. And I just think you should have more access to the mayor of the city throughout the year. So as we go forward here, it's going to be, obviously we want this to be a dialogue, and if I in the process express a personal opinion, it's my personal opinion, one of seven, so you can sort out what's policy and in process, as well as my opinion, instead of my opinion. And just the ground rules is that we'll go through a number of things from my side, and then I'll call on press first to ask penetrating questions and give insight to the other listeners. And then I will also ask you that are in the audience that are asking questions to please note that you're supposed to be asking questions. In other words, we don't want a particular monologue on an issue that you believe in. That's welcome, but not in this context. And then we're going to just do a strict 1 hour cutoff. Okay, so with that, I will start with a brief comment that on a legal update that has now been published, but I reported action from council on Monday night. And a statement was released by the city yesterday, Wednesday, noting that Palo Alto is joining a multi-jurisdictional legal effort to protect against threats to cut off all federal funding from local governments that limit cooperation with the federal immigration enforcement. That effort is being led by Santa Clara County and the city and county of San Francisco. We calculate that Palo Alto's at-risk funding amount is $87 million, and I will also note that that's a unanimous 7-0 vote by council coming out of private closed session. The online announcement also shares some details and answers some possible questions on the matter, such as what will this cost us, and the answer is it's not a fee at all because it's being led and we're joining an existing suit. So that is that first issue. The next one I want to talk about is the El Camino Real focus area, some early success and plan to expand. And of course, I was already scooped on this by the Palo Alto Weekly and Mr. Giannotti here, who published a good article on that. So in case you haven't read it yet, in 2023, we created a new area of the city called the El Camino Real Focus Area on parts of the west side of El Camino, bounded on the north by Page Mill. And happily, we've gotten great interest from developers in this new focus area with a number of applications. And also happily, the people on the east side of El Camino said, well, what about us? So there are developers on that side of El Camino that said, well, we would like to do that too. So one of the points here is that we are listening to developers when they come with plus or minus comments in regard to our collective effort to get housing built in our town. So we did listen to that. We reworked the plan, and on Monday night, council approved a new ordinance expanding that focus area by a vote of 5-0, 2 folks had to recuse, and that expands it to that side of the street. So the original El Camino plan was a flexible development standard, much more flexible than previous, particularly with respect to things like height and density, which is important to developers. But in exchange, qualifying projects had to provide at least 20% of residential units at or below 80% affordable, meaning 80% or less than the average median income in the county. And that was developed somewhat as an alternative to the state law, state density bonus, but also as a response to a couple of builder's remedy applications. And the newly amended program includes just two primary changes. One is geographic expansion, and the second one is the development standard modifications. We made a few more that will incentivize development, including adjusting standards to support more context-sensitive development, considering the adjacencies of adjoining land use. So we're projecting that this capacity, we would have an additional capacity of about 500 units over time to come out from just from the expansion. And it's clearly an extension of our commitment to increase affordable housing in the community, which is our absolute top priority. The third item I just want to talk about that is maybe a little bit under the radar. I hear it when I'm on rail committee, but not so much otherwise, and that's the quiet zones on the grade crossings. And the good news is we're actually working on all 4 of our grade crossings to make them quiet zones. Most progress has been made to date on the Alma one, as I call it. And that is, let's see, we got the selection of the contractors. Staff anticipates completion of these improvements by the end of 25, where that will be installed. This location needs PUC approval, but we have designs complete. Materials needed for improvement are basically on order, and the scope of that's going to go to council on June 2. And I'm quite confident that we're quite going to look at that quite favorably. The other one, or the other 3, basically, Charleston, Meadow, and Churchill, by law, we have to do a quiet zone study according to the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, and we're doing that right now for all 3 of them. Conceptual plans are under development, and outreach meetings are occurred already in April to get some community feedback and inform council on what we should do going forward there. There's also a standard state place where you can look, and that is on our website. Guess what? It's called Quiet Zone Study. Okay, paloalto.gov, Quiet Zone Study. So if you want to keep up to date on that, that's what we do. And now our regular topic, an update called CalAv. It's moving. The retail committee has just completed recommending their outdoor activation guidelines. Translated to English, that means what are we going to do on the street? And they have a list coming to council Monday, June 9th. So that should be coming along closely. If we approve it on June 9th, then that will be in place in time for what we call the winter months on CalAv and the necessary things to do there on the parklets. And then longer term on streetscape, staff has finalized the community meeting last week and is going to meet with council retail committee next month. And the design plans, the final design plans for that is going to be in front of council before the end of the year. You'll also, if you've been there, see that we now have planters and bollards, which makes it look a lot better for pedestrians as they walk into the CalAv area, and also just visitors driving by at that intersection with El Camino. And this finally removes the, my judgment, ugly orange construction barriers that we've had there, which has only been about 5 years, but it almost seems like it's been a permanent fixture. So really good progress happening there. One little slight careful note, though, is that just if you're out there with kids, let them know it's planters, not playground. We've also had a couple of sort of kids getting a little bit too close to ECR there, El Camino Real. So please watch your kiddos. Bike and pedestrian master plan status, that's going to be coming to council this coming Monday. I saw it last week in the rail committee meeting, and this is a study session. We're not taking any votes. We've gotten some public comment that it's going to be approved, it's not going to be approved. This is just a status update. And this will inform how we will go ahead with prioritizing and finalizing this plan with a priority list of projects. There's a lot of good work to get to this point, and the community feedback has been great. It's been very good. And the point, however, is that it's not over. We need to hear from you as you want priorities done on all the projects, because of all the stuff that's there, council's not going to be able to say, go do everything. So if you really have preferences, you want to rank them however you want to get us information, including coming to that meeting next Monday night. Another El Camino issue is the El Camino Real bike lanes. As you know, there's been a lot of action there by Caltrans, and they are now beginning to install the bike lane posts, which are called the delineators, on El Camino in Mountain View and Palo Alto, and that's expected to be completed by mid-June. So they're moving along on that now. And they are going to be doing enforcement of no parking in the bike lane, which has not been happening yet, shortly afterwards, in order to encourage the safe practice there. So this is coming fast now. The El Camino Committee ad hoc reviewed all the process there. I'm on that committee, and looked at short-term parking and transit passes and so on, and it's going okay. We are all aware that there's going to be some collateral issues there with existing businesses that don't have access to their doors, basically. And we're really working, the transportation department is really working on a one-by-one business as necessary, and as we get comments, to see if there's some solution we can do. Again, these are collateral issues that were inflicted on us by Caltrain, and we can't fix all of them, but the city is really making a valiant effort to try to address individual situations like that. And then also, I wanted to just note that we're starting to look at some what's called destination marketing on behalf of the hotels. Hotels are looking to come up with some marketing programs to address more people to come to Palo Alto for the amenities that are here. And GMs of about 10 hotels met recently for a good kickoff, so that's underway. I think that was supposed to happen later in the year, so I'm glad it's happening earlier. Also, our parklets, which our community loves, I just want to give you an update on that because even more is going on there. Staff is supporting the businesses throughout this development process. Rose and Crown has started construction of theirs for the first time, so soon you can have a beer in the parking lot, which is, I assume, legal. I assume we have that covered by now. And another restaurant, Steam Oclava, if I've said that correctly, they have received approval. Rangoon Ruby is in application, so that's going to happen. And another permit has been issued, but no construction yet at Pho Hanoi. So there's a lot of outdoor dining downtown anyway at 16 parklets already in the downtown area. And more outdoor eating is underway for all of our residents and guests. Next, I want to comment on the rental registry program, where we're talking to all of the landlords about basically what's going on so we can get a bunch of data to make a lot of decisions, one of which will be helping new developers decide where to put what kind of rental housing, how big, what the turnover rates are, and so on. And I'm really delighted to say that this has gone better than I would say I expected. And we've had excellent cooperation from the landlords, being very specific. There were only 4 instances in which we had to send reminders / administrative notifications to say, hey, you forgot to do this. So it's been really good. All the landlords are going to be getting feedback on what has happened with all this first year data so that they all get the same information. And that's going to happen very shortly, including rent levels and frequency of rent increases and tenant tenure. So that then will go to council in August. More to come, but that went very well so far. And then just lastly, there's two events that I want to alert you about. Coverly is having its next community meeting on June 12th at 6 p.m. So you can share this time input on concept designs, which is good because now we have something physically to look at and say yes or no on. And also you can continue to share your own input on that at the paloalto.gov Coverly project. And another one which is happening the 18th is the city's always looking for more and more parkland. And recently we were able to get more and approve it by council, and this is what was called the Tower Well site. It got dedicated and went through an engagement effort to rename the site. So now we're going to celebrate the park and the renaming on the 4th and come together and have I'll be cutting the ribbon, and it says short speakers program. That's absolutely true. And then just have some refreshments and celebrate the latest new park in our town. So with that, I now will offer time to anybody from the press that would like questions on this or anything else.
Thank you for the updates, Mayor. The first thing you mentioned is the lawsuits. I know the City Council went into closed session to discuss 2 lawsuits and came out with a decision to join one. Is the city still considering the other one, the American Federation, the one relating to workforce reductions? Or has there been a decision not to go through with it? Or will there be closed sessions?
Of course, I can never comment on what happens in closed session. So you are right, we did not come out with any action on that. So that's all I can comment on.
Well, do you expect there will be future closed sessions to discuss litigation against the Trump administration?
We, as you know, have a process now by which we can evaluate these that we work through, and I think quite successfully and collaboratively with all 7 of us. So we did that clearly to be poised if we needed to take action, and we decided that this was an action that needed to be taken. So I would be in a vacuum predicting if I said yes or no on that, but the process is there to activate quickly if need be, because some of these things are really time sensitive.
Okay. There's nothing scheduled at the moment as far as another closed session on this topic, or is there?
No.
Okay, great. And one more quick question about a different topic that you also mentioned. El Camino bike lanes, you alluded to the fact that parking's not being enforced. There's no parking citywide, but we still see parked cars in certain areas of El Camino, like near Stanford Avenue, just north of Page Mill. Is that legal? Are people just parking illegally in those little areas where there's still parked cars? I'm trying to figure out what the status is of parking in El Camino. It's a little confusing.
Just say the last sentence again, the status of park?
Just the status of parking on El Camino, because I still see some cars in a few places.
Yeah, the status is, we know that that's going to be all no parking, but they don't have no parking signs up all the way along there. And some people know that and are taking advantage of it, and some people don't know it and think it's a parking space. So with that confusion, the direction from the city manager to the police chief is, don't be arresting a lot of people right now, because we're only weeks away from having that finished. Unless, city manager, if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. Just to reiterate that, our police will focus on safety issues. So that said, the transition that has been occurring with bike lanes will be more obvious once they call them delineators are up, those plastic posts that will be used to separate the bike lane from the auto lanes. And at that point, physically it will be hopefully not possible to park at the curb.
And also the no parking signage will be installed, and that'll be more clear.
Any other press questions? Okay, appreciate that. So then any members here that like to speak? Obviously, we're not going to be taking questions from online. We've got a roving microphone here. You can start roving, Megan.
Thank you. Hi. Well, my biggest concern is RVs. So we live near East Meadow Circle, and based on my calculation from 2 days ago, there are 47 RVs in East Meadow Circle. I talked to some of them, right? So my wife actually told me I'm crazy, but I did anyway. So 2 guys, we are working at Google as a software developers. One of them has a house in the area, but decided to save for second house. One gentleman worked at NASA as a software developer. So there are illegal sewage dumping. I tried to confront a couple of times, but I was threatened not to stick my nose in somebody else's business, because there are quite a few white vans collecting illegally sewage and dumping it at the creek. So as far as the bike lane you mentioned on Fabian, near JCC, RVs actually blocking entire bike lane. So there are no access for bikes. In fact, it's quite scary. So what city actually, I mean, is there, and I talked to a couple of police officers and they said, well, city told us not to get engaged. So you kind of on your own.
Okay,
So,
so that, is that your question?
On my own.
Is your
Yes,
question?
that's the question.
Okay.
So what are you planning to do with the RVs? And it's kind of like few of us with the same question, but with different problems based on the same problem. So, and it's to me it's huge safety. It's a bigger issue. Once I was attacked by the bull terrier, which kind of jumped from the RV as I was just literally walking.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so the city manager has, I'm gonna let you take the first mic on that, because there is stuff that's going on in your office that
Sure.
is looking at these things.
Yeah, first off, I would say our police does respond to issues of, well, law enforcement issues. And so the basic law is that RVs need to move or any vehicle needs to move every 72 hours. So they will respond to those types of complaints. Issues of dumping, same thing. If that is illegal, then it should be reported and we will have staff respond. We have the police department that is part of a multi-departmental team, including our stormwater, or I'm missing the name of it, but in any case, folks who are monitoring what goes into the storm drains. So that's basically the baseline. As it relates to RVs overall, we know the City Council has set a priority to look at additional regulatory measures that can be done to increase regulation, while also recognizing that the city has provided safe parking locations within the city. Those are limited in capacity, so we don't expect that those can fit all of the RVs that are currently in town. But in any case, the City Council's Policy and Services Committee will be discussing, I think in August, options for additional regulation of RVs on city streets.
just to add, how about RV ban as Menlo Park and Mountain View did? I believe Palo Alto might have also lawyers who might deal with it, and I don't see the problem of doing it.
Sure, if you do a little research in Mountain View situation, I'm not as familiar with Menlo Park, but Mountain View actually has a settlement agreement in which, as a part of some restriction on RVs or oversized vehicles on some streets, they've actually designated 3 miles within the city that are permissible for RVs to park. And so that was a result of a lawsuit against the city once it implemented its oversized vehicle ban, and ultimately resulted in what I just described as the steady state going forward.
Can I add something? Is it okay? I mean,
Yeah.
so there are rules as far as the RV. So when you mentioned 72 hours, I talked to several police officers, and they said, well, in 72 hours, we need to move, and we don't know, I mean, we don't care for how far, literally a couple of feet. So none of the RVs on East Meadow moved. One gentleman did not move for the last 8 years. I mean, I don't know if it's counted as 72 hours, or I don't know. I literally saw his kids growing up.
So Ed, you can probably confirm that.
So as far as I understand, it needs to be 72 hours, and what is it, like 1,500, I mean, mile and a half or half a mile, something like that. So definitely not a couple of feet. So I think that there is disconnect between the police and the rules, and ironically, one of the police officers asked me like, well, what do you suggest I do? And I said, well, you're the one who took the job. I'm the South Korean. I didn't take the job, you did. So it's actually city and the police which needs to actually work it out, and, right? So which was, you know, I thought it was funny and ironic, right? It's like, well, tell me what to do. Well, police follow the rules. Oh.
Hi. I just kind of wanted to ask if you guys had any plans to eliminate the issue of kind of safety concerns. So I've grown up in the Echelon complex, and my friend's mom was also attacked by a dog, and I know that they let the residents of the recreational vehicles let their dogs kind of roam around, so which is a bit of a safety concern to me and my friends, because we've been approached by a big dog multiple times, and it just feels unsafe to bike or kind of walk around in our neighborhood, so do you have any plans to eliminate those safety concerns?
Once again, really encourage you to report those to the police department. And I realize, and we've seen reports where folks have reported that RVs has not moved for extended period of time. The police department does respond. They will, if the vehicles have not moved, they will tag them. And at some point, depending on if it is actually a repeated offense, they will tow vehicles. But that said, it's on exception, and it does need to be handled by actual complaints. On the safety concerns, same thing. Need to report those, and the police department will follow them.
Actually, it's not true, because the police department told me there is no room to tow the vehicles, and it costs $2,000 per vehicles. So they said we don't have neither money or space to tow. So as far as that goes, it's actually not exactly true.
So there are other people with their hands raised, so if you'd like to chat with me afterwards, I can take additional concerns and comments.
I read somewhere that the state independent operator has allocated some backup transmission line for Palo Alto. I just wondered what the horizon is for that, and how much it's going to cost Palo Alto, and whether that is going to have to be part of our budget.
Are you speaking about the incoming transition line?
Transmission line.
Yeah. You may have more details, but the answer is yes, and the time frame is long. It takes a long time to make that happen. But
so
add to that.
Actually, just last week, the California Independent System Operator Board approved the inclusion of a second transmission line from Mountain View, basically, to Palo Alto, which, again, is, for those who haven't been tracking it, is something we've been seeking really since 2010. And so, major milestone. It's estimated at $42 to $84 million as a project that PG&E would actually implement. The good news is, City of Palo Alto would not receive the bill. The bill will actually be spread over what's called transmission access charges, really the grid statewide. And because ISO, Cal ISO really representing a statewide perspective on what's needed to move electricity throughout the state. So we have been talking about it as though City of Palo Alto or Palo Alto ratepayers have received a $42 to $84 million grant. You know, we'll all see an incremental charge, but again, that's spread over the state, and as such, not a direct expense to Palo Alto residents or businesses. The time frame, their plan calls for completion in 2034. So to the mayor's point, it's out. But we've heard and we've been working with both Cal ISO and PG&E to try to accelerate that. So we're hopeful that it could be done by 2030 rather than 2034. So still a ways out, but you know, we can see that on the horizon.
But with that one exception, it's mostly very good news. Someone's in the back there.
Sorry, I had to bring back the RV issues, and unfortunately, I do think city manager, your response is, I mean, pardon my language, BS, right? You're running around, and they're not really addressing issues, okay? I've taken some pictures. You know, those cars, those vans, has tags on their windows. Repeatedly, nothing happened. Some of the RVs has no wheels on there. Okay? It's been there for, this gentleman said 8 years. Okay? And you guys want to just leave this issue alone. And meanwhile, I have seen those, I'm a dog owner, so I've seen in the park, you know, whatever the animal control, whatever's writing citations, writing tickets to those nice dog owners. Meanwhile, they're just, you know, running around in the park, not sort of hurting anyone. I mean, what's the sort of bar? I mean, different people has different rules. Okay, you have particular set of people, you know, because they're easy to take on, so you just write tickets and fine them. Meanwhile, those people, I look at it as, I'm not saying that they are sort of not unfortunate, okay? Whatever the situation they're in, but they cannot at the expense of other residents around the areas. With the safety, you know, those dogs, I'm a dog owner, I walk dog. Some of the dogs, you know, they're very vicious. Some of the stuff, you know, they dump waste, whatever, on the street all the time. And when you're trying to say, hey, you can't do that, I was just preparing, I need to carry a gun around there. I mean, I don't have a gun, but.
Okay, I think you're on the record. Appreciate the comment.
Please report it. Please report those
We
incidents when they
reported.
occur.
Nothing happened.
Please report it nonetheless. It helps us build a record, and that makes the case for a follow-up.
You don't want the resident to organize.
Other questions? Okay, Janani gets a second turn.
I was wondering if there's any updates on the public safety building. This is my monthly inquiry. When will the police department be moving in there?
That is definitely one for Mr. Shikata.
I'm told that a temporary certificate of occupancy is imminent, and as soon as that, and imminent as in checking to see if it was issued today, but assuming that's not the case, I would expect that in the next few days. And move-in will occur phased over at least a month in all likelihood because of the number of operations or organizational units with dispatch, 911 dispatch, I believe the last unit that will be moving into the building, because obviously we can't miss a call, and that's an important part of the transition.
Thank you. Quick follow-up. Where's the city in terms of planning for what to do with the space at City Hall that's going to free up once the department moves out?
That planning for City Hall reuse is underway. The baseline plan is to move the Development Services Department that's currently across the street in leased office space into the space currently occupied by the police department. Oh, but we do know it will require some renovations before they can move in. So there's both the space planning ongoing as well as a recognition of the need to make some improvements.
Back in the back there.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. Where is the city up to in revising, as it's required to, various housing rules and regulations, not related to the intensive housing zone, but to specific initiatives that the state is requiring the city and other cities to adopt around improvements to existing residential housing stock, not like million floor apartment buildings, multifamily, new construction, but improvements that allow people to very minorly update and modify existing 100-year-old properties rather than be incentivized by code and current planning rules to tear them to the ground and build new. I believe the state has mandated that the city update its ADU policy. That's been sitting out for a month now. I also think the city is reviewing its designation protocol for homes that are deemed potentially historically eligible. I'm just curious, given the enormous fee and time suck that seems to be engaged by many of my fellow neighbors who are trying to do this currently, where the city is up to in allowing homeowners to allow their existing properties to gracefully age rather than being effectively incentivized by the existing housing rules and regulations to tear down their very beautiful properties and build pretty ugly new ones that are nominally up to code. Thank you so much.
I think you have a number of questions embedded in your question. So first of all, let me just address the ADU situation. The council has indeed just recently, in the last 2 weeks, updated the ADU policy. And we actually committed staff to look even further into upgrading it some more relative to the size of units and even looking at if some of those should be ADUs that are on ownership properties, and that's committed to staff to do. So that part is there. There was a situation, I can't remember exactly what the name of it was called, but where we asked people if they wanted to be on the historical register and that type of thing, and they were able to opt in or opt out of that. So that addresses that one, which was really driven by citizens, not by the city. You also asked generically about state laws relative to housing. Anything that's a state law, it's really easy. We have to follow the law. So whatever happens, we have to do it and do it within a reasonable amount of time. And I'm talking specifically about legislation, not necessarily the HCD's issues around housing element programs. So I think that was 3 of the 4. And I think the 4th one was more local, which might have to do with processing of applications in the city. And I know that in general, I don't know if this applies to the specific of historical houses, but in general, the planning department has really made great strides in getting approval process done faster, including also being able, in some cases, to be able to do it online without any visit and in a one-stop shop type thing. So the planning department, and hence the city manager, is well aware of that request need for our citizens, and it's being acted on. So that's the best I can do with those 4 questions.
Thank you very much.
I think I saw one other hand before. Okay.
Sorry, I wonder if there's an update on the fiber rollout. I know that there was recent discussions about setting fiber rates, I think UAC and the Finance Committee. When is it going citywide or something resembling citywide?
I don't actually remember when it's coming to council, but it's in front of the Finance Committee right now.
Yes,
right.
Yes. I believe it's going to be heard by them. Is it next week? Whatever their next meeting is.
Yeah.
And so that is rates in this initial pilot area. Ultimately, the continuation of the rollout beyond the pilot area will really depend on how well it's received within that pilot, hence the name. Just as it has been, I think, an increasing topic of discussion on whether the city should proceed with it or not. And for those who aren't aware, we are working on the potential to have a citywide fiber-to-the-home utility. And that would compete against other incumbents that are providing similar services. The approach that the city is taking is to coordinate that fiber rollout with grid upgrades for our electrical grid that we know we need to do for our sustainability programs and our electrification goals as well. So actually is a very opportune time to do the fiber in conjunction with the electrical upgrades. So ultimately, we'll have some financial information in front of the committee. We'll see how that is hopefully approved. Again, that helps build out the rate structure for the pilot area, which will inform ultimately City Council's next steps on whether to proceed.
And you are correct. UAC has been very active in another one of our great advisory commissions, has been giving good advice back to the council on that, and they will be scrutinizing the results of the pilot and using that data to decide where we go from there. Okay. Oh, one more.
This is probably a repeated question from the few people here, but since I'm here, I feel it's obligated to bring it up again. First of all, it's relating to the RV. I think we as a resident, we reported weekly. And every week I saw the city community manager come to issue the notice. Really appreciate it. But there's no consequences at all. Within a day, the owner will remove the notice, and then guess what? The RV is still there. This process, this cycle repeat week by week. I think we as a community, we are willing to partner with the city to figure out a solution, but I think this is something that we cannot ignore anymore. And another example is the RV owner have a truck with a wood clipper. Few days, they will bring another truck of tree, they do the trimming business on site. This is totally unacceptable. Some of the truck has a company name. I do not know how true is the company name. There are some tree maintenance company. I think this will only be observed by the resident who live nearby to see it, right? The police officer will not see it, the city community manager will not see it, but we need help, we need to escalate this issue. Thank you.
Hi, just on the same issue, just to throw another voice behind it. I also live in a neighborhood that is overrun with RVs, and you can experience it in all sorts of ways. You know, for me personally, you know, the RVs, you know, you just don't know who's inside. One of them had a dog that attacked my dog on a walk. It's a lot to contain, you know, a household in there, and I know that it's unfortunate that that's how it is, but I also think when you live, I can't walk over in those areas anymore in the circles. I just think, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and more dense and over the years, and they don't have, you know, all the time adequate sewer and places for their dogs, and, you know, it just spills over into the neighboring communities in a way that's really noticeable and heavy. So I just wanted to add another voice to that. And I also see notices on the vehicles that don't seem to ever be acted on. So I just don't understand what the process is. You know, and we're right next to a city like Menlo Park that has taken care of this decades ago by not allowing parking on the street overnight. I don't know why that's kind of easy for one city and hard for another.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to answer some of these questions. I hope you appreciate the access to the information and the staff. So we'll do this again, unless we hear a lot of information you don't need it, but we'll do it again. And in the meantime, you obviously have access to me and just Ed Lauing at, now we're at paloalto.gov, so we'll just switch that a little bit, or City Manager Ed Chicago. So thanks very much for coming.